Are my cones ready? Hey folks, that is the most asked question that I hear every single year. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Max Raphael here from Hops World with tip number 8. Are my hops cones ready for harvest? Let's do it. Hey friends, I'm glad I could be with you here today to talk about when my hops cones are ready to harvest. So your female hops plant will create these beautiful cones that we harvest and then we use them to make beer. But what date will my cones be ready to pick? That is what everybody always asks me. Well, unfortunately, there is no exact date to pick your cones. The cones of each plant and each individual variety and each individual area and each different year will be ready to pick on a different date. Unfortunately, there is no standard. The correct time to harvest your cones is actually dependent on the maturity of your plant. If you pick too early, you have a good chance that your cones are going to smell like grass or weeds. And if you pick too late, garlic or onion smell. And you don't want that either. So large farms actually calculate or test their hops for what is called dry matter in the hops cones. For simplicity, this is basically the percentage of water or humidity stored in the cone at any time. And average dry matter at harvest time would be between 20 and 23% moisture. Each variety can be a little different. In order to calculate this, you need scientific machines. You can also do it at home, but it's complicated and you need to sometimes use a lot of cones. Fortunately for us small producers, there are ways to know the correct time to harvest your cones, and these tips will help you know when is the correct way based on several signs. Okay, so I have 8 tips that I use to know when the hops cone is ready to pick. Normally, we check a cone about 2 or 3 feet from the top wire. That gives you about the best average for your plants to test. So the first thing that I check for is the color of the cones. The cones tend to turn a little bit darker, less bright green, and they get kind of darker on the tips. As you can see on some of these, they're definitely starting to get some dark tips on the little petals. Okay, that's the first thing that I look for when I'm trying to see if my hops are ready to pick. So the second thing that's real important is when you pull the cone off the plant. If you go to pull a cone off the plant and it pops off real easy right at the tip of the cone, it's typically ready. If you go to pull it off and it doesn't come off and you pull the whole branch off or something, your cone's not ready. So let's pull one of these cones off the branch and see if it's ready. It should pop right off, just pulling and not bring the whole branch with it, just like that. Ta-da! That's when you know the cone's ready. If not, you're gonna be pulling the whole branch and it's not gonna come off real easy. That's the second little tip. So tip number 3, what I do is I take a hops cone after I pick it and I grab it between my 4 fingers like this with the tip facing straight at myself, and I squeeze it and I split it open, kind of like peeling a banana. Now, if you look what happened, we can get close enough, the strig, or that little stem up the middle of the cone, actually split right down the middle. That's one way that you know that your cone is ready to pick. The other thing is, if you see all that yellow, that is actually lupulin. And that yellow is almost the color of gold. It's dark yellow. In a plant that's not ready, that yellow is going to be a lot lighter in color. So it's real important that that lupulin is really ripe and ready to pick. That's tip number 3. Now, tip number 4, if you take one of these halves of your cone and you fold it right on that sprig, what should happen is it should break right in half, just like that did. Okay, that was a little one. I'm using a hops cone that's kind of small just to show you it fit in the screen. This one, again, I'll clear away a little bit of the leaves. You can see the sprig split straight up the middle, and now I'll fold it in half. I can actually feel it snap. It snaps real simple. It broke right in half. And we know that that is ready to pick. That's tip number 4. Okay, so now we're going to talk about number 5, 6, and 7. So the first thing I do is I grab the cone and I start squeezing it and I listen. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's pretty obvious here in person that it has that sound as if you're crunching newspaper or any kind of paper. So that's really important when it's really dry, okay? That's number 5. Now number 6 is, what I do is I take the cone and I rub it between my fingers. And very quickly, as you can see, the cone just starts disintegrating and literally falling apart within 10 or 15 seconds. Most of the petals and all of the petals will eventually fall right off the cone. That's number 6. Number 7, oh my gosh, sticky. The oils of the cone have stuck to my fingers. You can feel it on your fingers. That means your cone is full of oils that are really important when you go to make beer. That's tip number 7. The last tip. So, tip number 8, and the most important tip by far after you pick a cone is the smell. Yes, folks, if you pick early, like I said, it could have a grassy or smell of weeds. And if you wait too late, it could have smell of onion or possibly garlic. So you should be picking every couple days, 2 or 3 days, up till harvest time, and look for them smells that your variety is known for. Whether it's floral, or whether it's resinous, or whether it's a little bit grassy, or pepper, or minty. Some of the smells dank that are coming out of these new hops varieties. So what I do to smell a hops cone is I actually take it in my hand and I rub it together, and I try to keep the leaves in there, and I try to break up the cone pretty much as I can. And this is how we learn to do it in Yakima Valley, actually, folks. So I'm kind of copying. And then after it's broken up, you can feel the oils in your hand. Instead of grabbing the cone and throwing it right in your nose, pass by your nose at a distance and take a nice deep breath and get a little bit closer and closer. Wow. Rub a little more. As you get them oils heated up, the smell even can change a little, believe it or not, until you're finally inhaling all of the aromas and pheromones of the hops. Yummy. That's tip number 8, okay, folks? I hope you liked our tips. I want to go pick some hops. These bad boys are ready. And one thing to remember is that on the same plant, it's possible to have cones like this that are ready to pick, just starting the tips of the petals turning brown, and other cones that are already past the time to pick, a couple here, and then cones that are still green, like these. You don't hear nothing when I squeeze these. And typically the cones lower down on the plant that get more shade take longer to be ready to pick. They stay greener. So if you can, the best thing to do is wait and just pick the cones that are ready. But if you have a lot of plants, you have to try your best to pick when the most cones are ripe. Okay, here we are back in Hops World. Get out of the sun. So now, you're expert on when to pick your hops. So the first tip I want to tell you, and these are real important for those of you that hung out to listen. The first thing I want to say is keep a log year after year. Even though the date might change here and there on certain varieties each year, after a few years you're going to have an idea that normally centennials first and crystals at the end or in order, to get an idea so you can plan better and to know better if you're in the ballpark when to pick. Okay, that's real important. Keep a log of each variety, not only when picking, but when they sprout, everything about the plants. Number 2, you don't have to pick, especially if you're, only if you're a home grower or a hobby grower, you don't have to pick every cone all at once. Okay, only pick the ones that are ready and then wait and pick the others. Obviously, if you have a big plantation, you have to pick the best date when the majority of the cones are ready. And number 3, and the most important, especially for us that don't have tons of experience, most home growers pick too early. It's the biggest mistake we can make. Probably the most important tip here and last thing. Wait. Make sure your cones are ready. I get so anxious seeing these cones grow and get big and fat and fluffy, and I see the lupulin inside. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna pick them every day. I'm gonna pick them. Be calm, okay? It's worth the wait. All right, folks, thanks for being here. I really enjoyed today's tip for sure. If you liked, put a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, tell your friends. Every week we're putting new tips all about hops. Cheers to life.